and welcome to this week's episode of Learn English with Natalie. Today we are going to be learning all about using adverbials to describe our daily routines and our daily habits. If you are a new listener, thank you so much for joining me today, wherever you are around the world. And if you are a returning listener, welcome back. And thank you for joining me. Please remember, if you are enjoying the content, to rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps more than you know. This is a new podcast. I'm trying to reach as many English language learners as possible, and your help will allow me to do that. So please remember, before we get into the lesson, that the following lesson is going to provide foundations for your English language learning. You may want to come back to this at a later time. Therefore, I recommend you keep notes either by downloading the PDF activity available in the show notes or keeping a journal of some kind. Learning a new language is very difficult, so please be easy on yourself. So rule number 1, consistency is key. And rule number 2, it is important that you make mistakes. The only way you're going to learn is if you make those mistakes. So go easy on yourself. Before we get into the lesson, we are going to have a recap on last week's lesson. If you haven't listened to that one so far, you might want to check out last week's lesson on making suggestions. So here we go, a quick activity for you. How can we politely make suggestions? Now I'm going to read out 5 phrases and I want you to pick out the ones that sound polite. So last week we were focusing on making suggestions in a way that didn't sound rude or bossy. Can you remember those phrases? Here we go. Number 1, how about we? Number 2, why don't we? Number 3, I demand that. Number 4, I suggest that. And number 5, it is important that we. So I'll read those again. We're picking out the polite suggestions. How about we? Why don't we? I demand that. I suggest that. It is important that we. Have a think for a moment. Can you identify the polite phrases? If you said, how about we? Why don't we? And I suggest that, you would be correct. Well done. Now, the other 2 phrases that I read out were I demand that, which is making you sound like you're commanding somebody to do something without giving them a choice. And the other one, it is important that we. That can be used in a polite way. However, it is a little bit more assertive. So, here we go. Episode 7. And like I said earlier, we are using adverbials to describe daily routines. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to describe daily routines, and you will also be able to confidently use adverbials to describe the frequency, so how often something is done. We're going to go into part 1, which is my teaching point. I'm going to teach you now why this is important. So why do you need to know adverbial phrases? And I'm linking it today to daily routines. However, you are going to be able to use these adverbials in different contexts, and you are improving your everyday English. Part 2, vocabulary and speaking practice. So first of all, we're going to concentrate on morning routines. And an example of a daily routine you might describe is wake up. When do you do that? You do that in the morning. The adverbial phrase here is in the morning. I'm going to read that out in a full sentence. In the morning, I wake up at 7 a.m. In the morning, I wake up at 7 a.m. Can you say that sentence? Perfect. Well done. So the daily routine, wake up, and the adverbial, in the morning. In the morning, I wake up at 7 a.m. Let's move on to the next routine. The next routine is get dressed. So you're waking up in the morning and you're getting dressed. You're putting your clothes on. So I'm going to say, after that, that's my adverbial phrase, after that. So after I have woken up, I get dressed. After that, I get dressed. I'm going to say it one more time, and then I want you to repeat after me. After that, I get dressed. Your turn. Wonderful. The next morning routine, to have breakfast or eat my breakfast. And the adverbial phrase I'm going to use to describe this is then. Then I have breakfast. So you can either say have my breakfast or eat my breakfast, or you can drop the my and say have breakfast or eat breakfast. It doesn't really matter. That sentence again, then I have breakfast. I'm going to say it one more time and then I want you to repeat after me. Then I have breakfast. Your turn. Wonderful. The next morning routine, commute. And commute means that you are travelling to work. So you would usually say commute to work. Commute is a verb in that sentence. Commute to work, that's C-O-M-M-U-T-E, commute to work. And you can also use commute as a noun, which I will show you in the following sentence. Now the adverbial phrase I'm using is finally. Finally, I begin my commute to work. So I'm using commute as a noun here. Finally, I begin my commute to work. I'll read it slowly. Finally, I begin my commute to work. I'll say it one more time and then I want you to repeat after me. Finally, I begin my commute to work. Your turn. Excellent. Now let's move on to work routines. So, I'm going to start off by using the adverbial first of all. So I'm describing now as soon as I get into work, first of all, and my routine is check my emails. First of all, I check my emails. I'm going to say that again. First of all, I check my emails. Can you say that? Excellent, well done. The next routine for work, attend meetings. And I'm going to use the adverbial usually. Usually. And this means sometimes, so most of the time, usually. It is usual. Let me read the sentence to you. Usually, I attend meetings. Usually, I attend meetings. Can you say that? Perfect. Excellent. Well done. The next routine I want to describe is eating lunch. And again, you can either say eat lunch or have lunch, or eat my lunch and have my lunch. It doesn't really matter. The adverbial phrase I'm going to use is at 12 p.m. Now this one's very specific. I'm giving a very specific time. At 12 p.m. I eat lunch. At 12 p.m. I eat lunch. Can you say that? Wonderful. And obviously you would change the adverbial to suit when you're eating your lunch. The next routine, work on projects. Work on projects. And the adverbial I'm going to use is mostly, because I do this most of the time. Mostly, I work on projects. Mostly, I work on projects. I'm going to say it one more time, and then I want you to repeat after me. Mostly, I work on projects. Your turn. Excellent. Now let's move on to evening routines. So the routine I'm going to talk about first of all is cook dinner. Cook dinner. And my adverbial phrase, when I get home. When I get home. So in a sentence I would say, when I get home, I cook dinner. You could also put the adverbial phrase at the end. I cook dinner when I get home. I'm going to read the sentence again and then I want you to repeat after me. When I get home, I cook dinner. Your turn. Excellent. You're doing a fantastic job. Let's keep going. The next routine, watch TV. And the adverbial phrase, to relax. I'm telling somebody why I'm doing it. So this one isn't talking about frequency. This adverbial phrase is talking about why I'm doing this. To relax, I watch TV. To relax, I watch TV. I'm going to say it one more time and then I want you to repeat after me. To relax, I watch TV. Your turn. Excellent. Finally, the last one, read a book. We often do this before we sleep. A lot of people do this. So, before I go to sleep is my adverbial phrase. Before I go to sleep, I read a book. Before I go to sleep, I read a book. And remember, you can also put the adverbial phrase at the end. I read a book before I go to sleep. I'm going to read the sentence to you again, and then I want you to repeat after me. Before I go to sleep, I read a book. Your turn. Fantastic. Well done. Now that's a lot of information to remember, but you can use these adverbials in many different contexts. It doesn't need to be to describe routines. They can be used a lot in your everyday English conversations. Part 3, listening practice. Listen to my daily routines. Can you identify the routines and the adverbial phrases? So I'm going to start off by reading out my morning routine. And I want you to listen for the routine that I discuss and the adverbial phrases that I use. Here we go. In the morning, I wake up at 7 a.m. After that, I get dressed. Then I have my breakfast. Finally, I begin my commute to work. I'll read it again. In the morning, I wake up at 7 a.m. After that, I get dressed. Then I have my breakfast. Finally, I begin my commute to work. Could you hear the adverbial phrases? I use the adverbial phrase in the morning, and at 7 a.m. is also an adverbial phrase. After that, then, and finally. Next, I'm going to read a paragraph discussing my work routines, and I want you to listen out for the routines and the adverbial phrases. Here we go. First of all, I check my emails. Then, usually, I attend meetings. At 12 p.m., I have my lunch. Mostly, I work on projects in the afternoon. I'm going to read it one more time. First of all, I check my emails. Then, usually, I have meetings. At 12 p.m., I have my lunch. Mostly, I work on projects in the afternoon. Did you hear the adverbial phrases? I'll go through them now. First of all, then, usually, at 12 p.m., mostly. And in the afternoon is also an adverbial phrase as well. Finally, I'm going to discuss the evening routines. When I get home, I cook dinner. To relax, I watch TV. I go to bed and I read a book. When I get home, I cook dinner. To relax, I watch TV. Before I go to bed, I read a book. Now I'm going to read that one more time and I want you to listen out for those adverbial phrases. When I get home, I cook dinner. To relax, I watch TV. Before I go to bed, I read a book. And the adverbial phrases I used there were when I get home, to relax, and before I go to bed. Part 4, independent learning. So for this week's activity, I want you to please use the adverbial phrases from this week to describe your daily routines. So you can write them down or say them out loud. And I want you to use the adverbial phrases in the morning, first of all, mostly, and usually. Don't forget to tag me on TikTok if you are feeling confident enough to share your work. And of course, you can use as many adverbial phrases as you like. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. It has been a pleasure to have you here and to teach you today. If you are interested in learning English at a faster pace, you might want to consider joining my book club. Now, My book club is available on Patreon, and each week I release an episode where I go into detail and discuss an English novel. It might be a classic novel, it might be a modern novel. Through these lessons, I will be discussing the plots, themes, and vocabulary of these stories. So I would love to have you over there. There is a 7-day free trial included, and you can find all the information for this in the show notes. Well done on completing today's lesson. It has been wonderful. Please remember to subscribe to this channel, whether you are listening on YouTube or on a podcast. You can find me at Learn English with Natalie on TikTok and YouTube. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'll see you next week.